Arcana cards are an essential part of your pre-run strategy in Hades 2. Putting together a great build to clear the final region can feel like it's up to the gods. However, an optimized Arcana card deck can tip the scales in your favor. So in this tier list video, we'll analyze each card, ranking them based on their strategic value and grasp cost. So whether you're a newcomer to Hades or a seasoned champion of the night, this guide will help you choose the best cards for every build and every run. Before we do get into the rankings, let's quickly cover what they are and how to unlock them. And if you already know this part, skip to 1 minute 20. Now before you can begin using Arcana cards, you'll first need to speak to Hecate and enact the incantation called the Consecration of Ashes at her cauldron. Once you've done this, the Altar of Ashes will appear in the Crossroads training grounds and prompt you to meditate. The function of each Arcana card is hidden until you reveal it by first unlocking an adjacent card. The revealed cards appear in black and white and cannot be used until you've unlocked them using resources gathered during the night as you progress through chambers each run. Once unlocked, Arcana cards can be activated with Grasp or be awakened by fulfilling the required conditions. Early and late game strategies for building your deck will vary considerably. Maxing out Grasp requires a significant amount of psych, so be patient as you play through and focus on enjoying each run rather than trying to rush to acquire all 30 Grasp. Okay, so let's get into the tier list now then, and these rankings were curated by our Hades expert Hooky Dookie, who's played over 600 hours of Hades 2 and cleared every weapon aspect at high fear in both the underworld and the surface, including multiple at 62 fear. So let's start with the cream of the crop, the S tier Arcana cards that are so valuable you should spend the Grasp to activate them every run. These are the hard meta of Arcana in Hades 2. First up, we have Death. No other Arcana card has more potential to improve your odds of success than Death. Having 3 Death Defiances easily makes the difference between a victorious run and being sent back to the Crossroads in defeat. Overall, Death has a higher peak impact than Strength because the Death Defiances can be refilled by Echo and Athena or purchased at the Charon's Well and Shop and at Shrines of Hermes. Add Tula to your loadout and you'll begin with an extra Death Defiance that can also be refilled in the same manner. Then we have the Furies, which may be the one Arcana card that should never be turned off. There really is not a scenario where you wouldn't find spending 2 Grasp on the Furies not worth it. The bonus damage will benefit you from the first to the last chamber. Keeping enemies in your cast is a core gameplay mechanic, so you won't even have to actively think about activating it. Then we have Origination, and the only minor drawback is the 2 gods and 2 curses required to activate it. You can often activate this Arcana during the first region, but it may be later into the run depending on what god and boons you are offered. It's important to note that Origination will not be activated with 2 curses from the same god. For example, you can't activate the bonus damage with Arctic Ring and Arctic Gale, as even though Freeze and Gust are separate curses, they're still from the same god. There are practically 0 builds where you'd find sacrificing the plus 50% damage worth using the Grasp on other Arcana. Then we have Persistence, and even if your build is not particularly magic hungry, the low 2 Grasp cost of this one is always worth it. Considering our base health is only 30, Persistence will more than double it at max rank. Costing only 1 single Grasp, the Sorceress should be turned on in 99% of your runs. Even the base level of 20% increased channel speed is better than Racing Thoughts and many Omega Hammer upgrades. Then we have the Wayward Sun. Underworld runs will always contain 40 plus locations, and playing on the surface you'll often pass through 50 plus. Therefore, the Wayward Sun equals 200 plus extra healing over the course of a night. So 1 Grasp is a very small price to pay for such a high return here. Then finally in the S tier we have Swift Runner, another single Grasp Arcana that not only increases sprint speed, but just as important is the pass-through mechanic. Without Swift Runner, you won't be able to dash through larger enemies and guardians. Moving down to the A tier next, and each one of these cards has high impact but is not considered a must-have like those just mentioned in the S tier. When your Grasp is limited, these will be secondary choices, but after reaching max Grasp you'll add them to nearly every loadout. First up we have the Centaur. Now the condition to turn on this card is activating casts that use 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 Grasp. Once you have around 20 Grasp unlocked, the Centaur will be activated with a majority of viable Arcana builds. As long as you don't have to activate totally random Arcana to turn on the Centaur, it's making minor adjustments to your loadout as you'll go into the final boss around plus 40 max HP and magic. Then we have Strength, and the only reason this isn't in the S tier is because Death exists. If you watch gameplays from previous patches, you'll see strength was highly favoured over death, but ever since the nerfs to strength, these two Arcana are more about preference than power level. The one thing that gives death the edge is the ability to refill death defiances as mentioned previously. Because of the 40% reduction in damage taken, strength increases the value of healing, so as long as you're not playing with any Vow of Scars activated, strength offers similar sustain to death. However, when you are looking to maximize your offense, strength is the better choice for its global damage buff. Next we have the Huntress, which some builds rely heavily on for damage. Omega move focused builds have little use for the boosted standard attack and special damage. But anytime your weapon aspect or build uses frequent standard moves, consider the Huntress for sure. You'll need to manage your magic and make sure it's never maxed out or primed to 0. Gain boons that constantly refill magic like Glamour Gain and Grizzly Gain can make it difficult to keep the damage boost activated. At max rank, the Boatman will start you out with enough money to buy 2 god boons from Charon's shop. Although it comes at a high cost of 5 grasp, it's well worthwhile. Later on, when you are climbing fear levels, Vow of Debt 2 raises the base cost of god boons to 270 gold crowns, effectively decreasing the value of 300 gold. One extra boon is still extremely desirable, especially at higher fear levels, and you'll be looking to activate the Fates as well. Then we have the Champions. The ability to reroll boons is your greatest asset for consistently hitting those good builds. So path your Arcana unlocks towards the Champions as soon as possible and start upgrading it. If you want to get those precious +4 Change of Fate from the Fates, then you need to commit 12 Grasp to activate the surrounding cards. This is an extremely high price, but the extra rerolls can then be used for either doors or boons. With everything fully upgraded, having 10 Change of Fate rerolls gives you impressive control over the RNG in Hades 2. Just before we move into the B tier, the previous 3 we mentioned, the Boatman, the Champions and the Fates, would actually all be F tier when using the post-credit keepsakes, as these deactivate Fate's Whim, but more on that later. So these B tier Arcana cards are situationally strong and depending on your build and playstyle can be subbed in for the cards ranked higher. These B tier cards will be the most important Arcana for the Knight in some scenarios. Knight is an Arcana card that won't always be useful. However, when you build around alternating Omega moves, the chance for critical damage makes this the most impactful card in your loadout. The Lovers only benefits you during Guardian encounters, and the 1, 2, 3, 4 invulnerable hits will make the difference between victory and defeat on those extremely tight boss battles. Whilst rerolling doors is not quite as good as rerolling boons, the Enchantress is most often used because it's required for the Fates. However, depending on your build and what you're being offered, you will want to reroll doors. If you don't need magic, you can reroll Soul Tonic, or if you don't need any more boons from the offered god, reroll their door. Like some we mentioned in the A tier when using the post-credit keepsakes, this card deactivates Fate's Whim and would therefore be F tier. Then we have the Artificer, which sees more use in the underworld than on the surface. This is because it's easier to earn a higher number of major rewards on the surface, thanks to the extra runes in Ephera and the Shrines of Hermes. When you feel like the first region is giving you a lot of trouble, starting with the Artificer will help you get your build off the ground sooner. Then our final B tier option is the Messenger. The invincibility window from this is exceptionally tight, so you need to practice your timing if you plan to consistently utilize this as a dodge tool. The speed boost is also pretty useful though for dodging attacks and repositioning. The Messenger is never a bad addition if you have a leftover grasp or in builds that sub out the Lovers and use a 2 grasp card like the Huntress instead. Moving into the C tier now, and these 4 cards have meaningful effects but shouldn't be the focus of your grasp use. Only activate or awaken these cards when it's convenient. The most common method of awakening divinity is to activate every card in the left column or every card in the middle row. Getting the right epic boon in place of a common will take your build from feeling decent to busted. The awakening requirement for the Queen means that with most builds you won't have it turned on. We recommend having the Queen be one of the very last Arcana you upgrade. At rank 1, a 6% chance is negligible. Then we have Eternity, and the truth is, as you improve at Hades 2 and at recognizing enemies' attack patterns, you typically just won't need it. But it is a good early game Arcana because it buys you time to react with a dash to dodge enemies' attacks and cancel your Omega channels. An important thing to note is that when you've activated the Vow of Frenzy, the timer does not slow down during Eternity, so you usually won't want to use it if you're in a tight race against time. When planning for a Knights build where you are constantly using Omega moves though, Eternity does become a worthwhile card. Then finally for the C tier we have the Moon. The best thing about the Moon is that the builds you would want auto hex charge on will typically be using either Eternity or Knight. However, builds that use a lot of magic don't really need the charge per second to use the hex. It's nice to have, but not really that impactful. Then finally we have the 3 D tier Arcana cards left that are simply not worth it because of the cost of activating them, making them just unviable choices. Under no normal circumstances should these ones be selected, and we recommend leaving them as the very last card you spend resources on to upgrade and unlock. First up we have Excellence, which costs a whopping 5 Grasp. This doesn't grant a chance for every boon offered to be at least rare, and instead it means one of the 3 you are offered will have the increased odds. When you're just having fun or fulfilling the fated list of minor prophecies and just need a particular legendary boon, only then should you consider spending that 5 Grasp on Excellence. Then we have Judgment, and although it should go without saying, limiting yourself to just 3 Arcana cards is generally not going to be worth activating it. Activating random Arcana cards after defeating each Guardian is basically only good in for fun runs. The true purpose of Judgment is when you're ready to go full sweat tryhard mode and attempt to clear Hades 2 at 65 Fear. Since you're limited to just 6 Grasp from the Vow of Void, Judgment's RNG is vital to this prestigious victory. Then finally we're calling the Unseen the least valuable Arcana card in the entire game. 5 Grasp is just way too much for a magic regen equivalent to an epic glamour gain or rare Will from Chaos. Just get any number of good gain boons, grab a few soul tonics and take Hecuba with you and you will never need to waste nearly 20% of your max grasp on the Unseen. Okay guys, so that's our full Arcana cards tier list, but before you go we want to give you a bit more context to the Fates Whim, which we mentioned a few times throughout the video. These are some late game spoilers though, so drop us a like and bugger off now if you enjoyed the video and don't want to learn more for later into your journey. Everything you think you know about Arcana build strategy changes once you unlock and use the 3 post-credit keepsakes Jeweled Palm, Calling Card and Timepiece. All 3 require you to be at the Fates Whim, meaning you are unable to use the Fates, the Champions, the Enchantress or any god's keepsakes such as Cloud Bangle. When doing a Fates Whim run, here are some general tips for how to structure your altered Arcana deck. Depending on your weapon aspect, there will of course be a few changes you should make. If you aren't going to be using Omega move combos, then you should definitely unequip Knight and use the extra 2 Grasp on something like the Wayward Son and the Messenger. One other interesting choice here is that we're recommending Excellence over the Boatman. First off, we don't need rerolls, so the Fates or reroll corner has diminished in value. Secondly, with Vow of Debt 2 activated, 300 gold crowns is only +1 boon, so gaining higher chances for rare and legendary feels like a better way to use 5 Grasp. Since you don't have the reroll corner activated when using the post-credits keepsakes, you effectively chain 12 more Grasp to spend than normal. On top of the incredible power of each of these keepsakes, you can also activate Arcana cards that you normally wouldn't, or stack a bunch of ones that you previously only dreamed of. So experiment with different combos because Fates Whim is a great time to get more use out of Arcana cards that you normally wouldn't go for. And there you have it guys, that's our full Hades 2 Arcana cards tier list explained and a few other tips along the way. A huge thank you to Hooky Ducky for creating so many amazing Hades 2 guides over on our website, and if you want to read the full written guide of this video, you can click the link below. Thanks for watching guys, good luck in your runs, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.